Boys, today I will be talking about why ranked choice voting is the best voting method, right? Every single time I talk about ranked choice voting and all the problems that it can solve in America, which I covered in another YouTube video. If you want to watch it, it's right here or somewhere. My editor will figure that out. People always say, oh, what about the star method? What about approval voting? What about this? What about that? Those voting methods all suck, and I will tell you why in this video. Also, people oftentimes mix up ranked choice voting with Borda Count. Borda Count is the worst voting method of all of them. It is worse than our current system. So I will show you specifically why or what the differences are between ranked choice voting and Borda Count. And I will show you some voting ideas that I have for America that I've seen nobody else talk about. Now, I'm not saying I invented them. I'm sure somebody else has thought of them, right? There's pretty much no unique idea at this point. But it's something that I have uniquely thought of and I think could even be better than ranked choice voting. And I'm curious what your perspective is. But first, what I covered in the previous video is everything that you see here. How ranked choice voting alone can promote better policy, eliminate gerrymandering, eliminate polarization, fix bias in lying media, and so much more. So if you want to see that, it is in my other video. But in this video, I'm covering all the different voting systems and why ranked choice voting is the best. For starters, first past the post. This is what we have today. I would rank it a 4 out of 10 voting system, which isn't terrible, but it is below average. Okay. The problem is, as I covered in the previous video, it promotes a two-party system, right? At the end of the day, if you are voting for, it's very easy to tell who the two candidates that are most likely to win are. And if you don't vote for one of those candidates, you're basically throwing your vote away. So that means there's just no reason to have a third party, right? They're going to get slowly phased out, and then you're going to have two parties, and those two parties are just going to build the system so that they continue to win forever. It's just a matter of time. Now, it took America a couple hundred years to hit this point, and I think the thing that has really solidified it is social media and modern media, where at this point, we'll never again see a third party unless we change the voting system. But we did see third parties in the past. And the biggest issue with it is strategic voting, which is going to be a big theme of this video. What strategic voting is you don't vote for who you think the best candidate is. For example, in the previous election, we had RFK run, and there was a decent amount of Americans who probably thought that he was the best possible candidate for president, but they did not vote for him because he didn't really have a chance of winning. So a lot of the people that would have voted for RFK ended up voting for Donald Trump instead. Strategic voting. It's when you don't actually vote for who you think the best candidate is. Real quick, now let's do Borda Count. And to explain these voting systems, I will be playing YouTube videos that have much higher production value than I do, and then we can talk about it afterward.
Finally, the Borda Count method is frequently used by sports leagues to determine award winners.
Very commonly, like NFL MVP, NBA MVP, right? Let's say, I'll let her explain and then I'll talk about
each ranking is assigned a point value. 4 points for first, 3 points for second, 2 points for third, 1 point for fourth, and 0 points for fifth. A candidate's score is determined by adding together the points it receives for its ranking on each ballot.
So essentially, if I would rank the candidates, and whoever I put first would get that number of points, whoever ranked second would get that number of points. You total everybody's points, and that person ends up winning the election. Pretty straightforward, right? NBA MVP, for example. Let's say it's between SGA, Jokic, Wemby, and Luka Doncic, right? And it's very clearly either going to be SGA or Wemby who ends up winning the MVP. And I really want Wemby to win. And I think SGA is the second best option, but I really want Wemby to win. What am I going to do? I'm going to put Wemby at first, then I'm going to go Jokic, Luka, and then SGA in fourth, even though I think he's second best. It is promoting me to lie on my ballot so that another candidate could win. And what could happen is if everybody, or like 98% of people, there's 98 voters, 98 of them think it's between Wemby and SGA, and the other two think it's Jokic, what's going to happen is all the Wemby SGA people are going to put Jokic second, and the two SGA people or the two Jokic people are going to put him first. And Jokic, even though 98 people think that he's the third best, honestly, is going to end up winning the election. So the third best candidate for MVP ends up winning because people are lying on their ballot. Massive, massive problem. That is why Borda Count, Borda Count yucky, right? Borda Count bad, Borda Count ucky, like get it out. Yeah, you have this like max-min strategy, which is something you're going to see a lot. It could also lead to radical unlike candidates winning, right? I talked about Jokic being the third best candidate, but if you have a third most popular candidate who's extremely radical, like this guy, he could end up winning, even though most people don't like him because they rank him artificially high because they're like, oh, there's no way this guy wins. And then it turns out a lot of people had that mindset, and that guy ends up winning. Really dangerous. Really, 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 really dangerous. Borda count bad. Another issue with Borda count is the winner is actually affected by factors that shouldn't matter, right? Like the number of candidates that are running for the president. Essentially, if we just artificially increase the number of people that are running, the point values change, right? Previously in that video it was 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But if we had 10 people running, it would be 10, 9, 8, 7, you know what I mean? And that change in number of people changes the ratio of points between first and second and third and first and third and all this other stuff. And it will actually change the winner. So people are always going to be like, well, I think the ballot should have been 5 people. And if it was 5 people when we added this candidate and everybody ranked in 5th, my candidate would have won. You're going to have debates like that. It's stupid. Borda count sucks. Bad. Terrible. Terrible. Bad. Awful. Another thing is you could also have point systems like there was 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But what if we did like 10, 3, 2, 1, 0 or 10, 5, 2, 1, 0, right? For example, F1 races, right? We could copy their system where there's 20 people, you rate them all, and like the bottom 10 all get 0, but the top ones get... There's a million different ways to have the points. And that point system is always going to be debated, and worst of all, it is going to be changed person to person and leader to leader. The party that is in power is going to change the point system so that their party has advantage and they're going to win over and over. End of story. Borda count getting a 2 out of 10. If you guys know how I rate things, food-wise, right, I never give things like a 9 or higher unless it is truly outstanding. I never give things like a 1 or lower unless it is absolutely terrible, right? A 1 or lower would be like a voting system that we haven't even thought of because it's such a no-brainer. It's so terrible that it's literally just going to elect Satan every single time. It's like, doesn't matter who I put on the ballot. Oh, Satan wins, right? That would be a 1 or lower. Borda count is almost that. That is how terrible it is. We cannot have Borda count. Number 2, approval voting. Approval voting, I'm saying, is better than our current system. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. Let's watch a video on what it is. Now, I do want to say, this guy has a video later on star voting that makes me completely hate this video altogether. So if I have a negative connotation,
Ash on
that is
you.
why. But overall, this is a fine video. But his take on star voting is
Do you
horrendous.
approve of us starting with approval voting? In an approval voting system, voters mark which candidates they approve of. If they don't find a candidate acceptable, they leave the space next to the candidate's name blank. If they do find the candidate acceptable, they mark it. So say these are the 5 candidates on the ballot. You love Bobby and think Steve Bob and Tim Bob are also all right. However, you think Bobby Bobson Jr. is a sociopath and Bob only cares about his corporate donors. Therefore, you vote for Bobby, Steve Bob, and Tim Bob, and leave the spaces next to Bobby Bobson Jr. and Bob blank. So say the...
Basically, you just show what candidates you approve.
These are the total results of a batch of ballots. All you do is total up the...
Boom. So the election could end up looking something like this. The issue is, right?
The approvals for each candidate. Whichever candidate gets the most approval.
Okay, if I'm looking at this, right, and I am this person right here, and I see that it's either going to be Steve Bob or Bobby, but I really think that Bobby is the better candidate over Steve Bob. But I know that it's going to end up being this way. What am I going to do? I'm going to not mark Steve Bob so that my favorite candidate has a chance of winning. And what's going to end up happening is people are just going to check the box next to their favorite candidate alone. And it's going to lead to our current system today. A lot of voters are going to lie on their ballot to lead to the system that we have today. Now, the reason that I'm saying that it is equal to or slightly better than the system that we have today is because many voters will be honest on their ballot. But I'm also kind of torn to say that it's slightly better than our system today because you're also going to have people complain and be like, well, what defines approval, right? And people are going to be like, well, if I had voted this way, right, this guy would have won. And you're going to have people complaining that they didn't really vote how they wanted, and it's going to lead to a lot of protests and things like that. I could see this ending up being worse than our current system today. So I'm very hesitant to say that it is better, but I don't know. I'm torn. It introduces new cons and it removes some of the issues that we have today. So it's hard for me to really say, all in all, there's no point in us doing it because there's a better system known as ranked choice voting, which I will get to later. The other thing is, right, and this is what I'm kind of alluding to, candidates get an equal vote on my ballot, even though I don't see them equally, right? I could approve of 2 candidates, but there's one candidate that I clearly see better, and I can't properly reflect that on my ballot because I'm just showing who I approve of. Next, we have score voting, and this is very easy to show what's wrong about it when you look at how things are rated, right? If I have a favorite restaurant in town, right, maybe if I had to rate it 1 to 10, I'd still call it like a 9 out of 10, right? I wouldn't call it a 10 out of 10. But the problem is other people are going to call their favorite restaurant a 10 out of 10, and I want people to go to my restaurant. So I have no choice but to give it a 10 out of 10. Or if I go out to eat at like Culver's, for example, and I have good service, right? Maybe it was like an 8 out of 10 restaurant, right? And with like 8 out of 10 service. It's not a 10 out of 10 restaurant. But I have no choice but to give it a 10 out of 10 because otherwise their score is probably going to go down, right? If you look at restaurants' ratings, they're all like 4.7 to 5 stars. The reason for that is everybody either rates things a 5 or a 1. The star rating for restaurants means absolutely nothing because of how score voting works. And the way score voting would work, which I didn't fully explain, is basically you have a bunch of candidates and you just rate them 1 to 10. Seems great, right? You can truly say what you like about every candidate. But you're going to have strategic voting where people just put their favorite candidate as a 10 and everybody else at a 1. We have proof of that. Great example, let's say the dunk contest, right? And it's between Mac McClung and LeBron James. And Mac McClung has this absolutely amazing dunk, but you don't like Mac McClung. You love LeBron James. LeBron James, you need him to get a dunk contest onto his resume. That way you can argue that he's better than Michael Jordan. So what are you going to do? Even though that was the best dunk of the night, you're going to give that dunk a 0 so that LeBron can win instead of a 9 where you think it might actually deserve. Silly little example. Star voting. What is it? Star voting is real complicated, so we're definitely going to watch a video on this one. It's a good video example of what star voting is. I'll let him keep talking, though, and I hope it pisses you off as much as it pisses me off.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible. Voting is kind of a combination of score voting and ranked choice. Okay. Finally, it would take a bit longer to find out the results of the election. In my opinion,
he was just talking about the issues with ranked choice voting. Overall, he had fair representation.
And though the real star is star voting. Star voting is kind of a combination of score voting and ranked choice voting.
Score voting is what we were just talking about. Ranked choice voting is what I want to implement. Right? Score voting is the one I just previously talked about. The dunk
stands
contest
for
example.
score, then automatic runoff. You would vote in a similar way you would vote for score voting. So you'd rate the candidates on a numerical scale, typically between 0 and 5, with 5 representing best and 0 representing worst. However, what makes star voting different than score voting is how the votes are counted. There are 2 rounds of counting the votes. In the first round, or scoring round, all the scores for each candidate are added up and averaged. The 2 candidates with the highest scores are selected.
You should not average it. Averaging it is stupid. You just add up the total. The averaging does nothing. All you're doing when you average is you're dividing by the number of people. It's just another step for no reason. The reason he talks about averaging is because you could just not rank some people. The issue with that now is, and this is why this video I think is terrible, right? He doesn't fully understand these voting methods. But if you don't rate somebody that you don't fully understand and you just go off average, let's say this guy is running and only like 5 people in the entire country know anything about him, but they love him, so they all rate him perfectly and nobody else rates him, he's going to win off average because only 5 people voted for him. That's why average is so fucking stupid. And I get frustrated by videos like this.
Finalists
see
for
why
the second round. In the second round, or automatic runoff round, the finalists face off on every single ballot. Whoever of the 2 have a higher score on each ballot gets a vote. If both of the 2 are tied, neither of the 2 gets a vote. At the end of the second round, whichever
So, I don't know if you should...
finalist has the most ballots with a higher score than the other finalist wins. Well, Bobby wins again. Hey, what does that say about approval voting?
So, problem. First of all, score voting. Once again, I'm just going to put my favorite candidate... Or, okay, if it's clearly between, like, Trump and Kamala, right? And I like them both, God forbid. And, but I like Trump a little bit better. Even though I would probably score them both highly because I like them both, I'm going to give Kamala 0 so that she doesn't make it to the runoff, and then Trump has a better chance of winning the runoff against somebody else. Or I could rate somebody else who Trump has a higher chance of winning the runoff against better. Strategic voting is still there. This is a massive freaking issue.
Star voting takes the best of all worlds.
No, it fucking does not. No, it fucking does not. Terrible. No, it doesn't, because you have score voting first, and people are going to lie.
Candidates
I just showed you why.
In a second round. The Center for Election Science even has found.
And this is why you'll see so many videos say star voting is so great. Because this stupid, I have no clue who funds them, or like what. I know nothing about them, but clearly they're stupid. Clearly.
It's the most accurate voting method. Unlike with ranked choice voting, voters can give multiple candidates
appeal to authority. Appeal to authority. Purely appeal to authority. An actual fallacy that you were using right here.
Same score.
Wait, what was the last one?
Voting, voters can give multiple.
Okay, this is a genuine pro over ranked choice voting. It is, because if I like two candidates absolutely equally, I have to rate one over the other. And I'll get to... Actually, I'll just cover it now. Right? The thing with ranked choice voting, how often are you truly going to be like, wow, this candidate is exactly equal to this other one? And you can't say, you know what, I like this guy a little bit better. Very, very rarely is that going to happen. If you actually have that problem and you have to put one over the other, what you can do, or what you will do, is you will just put one over the other, but somebody else statistically in an election where there's 180 million people voting is going to have the same problem, and on average is going to average out to where you guys cancel each other out. It's just how it's going to work.
Multiple candidates the same score. Star voting's biggest problem is not that it sucks, it's that people
Yes, it is. It is that it sucks.
just don't know about it.
Holy crap, what a terrible representation. This is why I don't like this, because there's so many issues with star voting and you're just not talking about them, right?
It's the least familiar of these 4 voting reforms, having not even been tried in the real world yet. Similar to ranked choice voting, it's more complicated than approval and score voting and would
And it's more complicated than ranked.
be more expensive for election offices.
A lot more expensive, right? But these are not, these overall, I would argue, agree with him, are non-issues. Mr. B, you probably, how many subscribers do you have? 1.38 million? I'm really disappointed. I'm very disappointed. How many views does this have? You literally just lied to 169,000 people. Overall, I said similar problems to him, but the same problems as score voting, right? I actually rate this lower than our current system because people are going to lie on their ballot. I think I put it slightly higher than score voting, right? I said score voting was a 3 out of 10 because you're going to have this problem. You have a problem with radicals, but star voting is even possibly worse than score voting. I'm really torn because it has the same problems as score voting and it's more complicated and all this other stuff. And when you have a more complicated election, people are going to complain about the results. You're going to be like, you know what, I didn't fully understand the system, so I didn't vote how I truly believe. That you just have a lot of problems with star voting. A lot. To say that it's only bad because people don't know about it is a massive issue. Condorcet, the most complicated.
To carnativities.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Varieties of Voting Systems. In this video, we will be looking at the Condorcet method, also known as
I haven't seen this guy's other videos on voting systems. I put this whole slideshow together in about 20 minutes, but he does an amazing job.
pairwise
To the
voting.
point where I wish I might have used him
The
for other
Condorcet method
videos.
is a pairwise voting method that will not always return a winner. It compares each set of candidates in a one-on-one contest. There is a Condorcet winner if there is some candidate that beats all of the other candidates in pairwise competitions. What does that exactly mean? Well, let's take a look at an example. So take a look at these ballots. A through G are voters, H through K are candidates. First past the post, and Nauru's Borda Count will select I. Instant runoff will pick K. However, a standard Borda Count, Buckland voting, and the Condorcet method will all choose a different winner. To determine the winner, in the Condorcet method, we must compare all of the individual pairings. First, let's look at I versus...
So, I could just let him explain it, but I'm going to explain it because you guys are watching me. So, here. If we compare just J and I, J beats I. Right? They have 4 wins here, 3 wins here. Even though they're ranked much... I is a lot more people's first place votes. It doesn't matter. More people prefer J over I. Then we could go J versus H, right? And J wins... 1, literally just 1, and H is preferred everywhere else. So now H would be the winner. So now let's just do H versus I, right? H loses these 3, but it wins these 4. So H wins that one too. Then we can do H versus K. And H wins here, loses, wins. So H wins head-to-head against every other candidate. So H would be the winner because head-to-head, 1v1 against every other candidate, they win. So essentially it is... If the country prefers H over I, the country prefers H over K, the country prefers H over J, H should be president. That makes a lot of sense, but it's very, very confusing. Very confusing. And you're very highly likely for ties, right? You cannot do Condorcet alone because it's incredibly common and honestly more likely that you have a rock, paper, scissors scenario where people prefer H over I over K, and K over H, right? And they all win 2-1 basically, and then there's a third candidate that nobody likes, or a fourth candidate that nobody likes. It does handle center squeeze well. I'll get to center squeeze later. It's very complex, hard to count. You could still have strategic voting. This is my problem with the Condorcet method. My problem with the Condorcet method is what I could do is, hey, I like this candidate second best, but I'm afraid that if I put them second best, I'm increasing the chances that they win more battles in this like 1v1 thing, and then it leads to a tie with my voting method, right? The strategic voting is very, like, you have this burial problem where if it's clearly between two candidates, I'm just going to bury the person lower so that they win less battles, and then my favorite candidate can win. Slight problem. It's a bit more confusing. Slightly more likely than strategic voting and ranked voting, but yes. Another thing you can have with the Condorcet method that people have proposed is you do Condorcet, and if somebody clean sweeps, then you do ranked choice voting. I like that a lot, and I covered it a little bit later. But we're on to the GOAT. The GOAT. That's why he's the GOAT. That's why he's the GOAT. Ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting, I've already covered how it works, right? You literally just rank the candidates. If your favorite candidate is eliminated because they have the least first place votes, then your vote goes to your second person. So you're always only voting for one person at a time. So there is no strategic voting, because why would you ever rank somebody higher to give them your vote if you can only vote for one person at a time, right? If I artificially move somebody higher on my ballot to like try and increase the chances of somebody else winning, it wouldn't make sense, because I'm moving the person that I want to vote for lower, and when my favorite candidate is eliminated, I'm just not voting for that person anymore. It does not, like, strategic voting does not make sense. The only reason people say there's strategic voting is because of this paradox right here. This paradox is very complicated. The best way that I can explain this paradox is monotonicity paradox. So this is how it works. If this is our original election, right here, this adds up to 72. So C has the least first place votes, C is eliminated, A gets all their votes, and they end up winning. But B realizes this, or these specific BAC voters realize this. So what they can do is move their favorite candidate lower so that A has more first place votes. So they should be helping A. A gets more first place votes. But when they do this, B is eliminated. C now wins the election because it's 54 plus 48. But they moved themselves, they boosted their second favorite candidate, but yet they decreased their chances of winning because now this person is eliminated first. That is the monotonicity paradox.
So again,
okay, very confusing. Shouldn't happen too often. That is why I find it a non-issue. Pros of ranked voting. No strategic voting. It eliminates the spoiler effect. It's very easy to understand, and you have to win with a majority, right? You cannot win the election until a majority of the people rank you above other people. Issues, you have this center squeeze effect, right? Typically, you'll see people slightly right or slightly left win, but nobody ever right in the middle. The reason for this is people will typically prefer a right-leaning candidate or a left-leaning candidate, and they won't put a central candidate first. So the central candidate is usually always somebody's second vote, and they're eliminated first. This is the central squeeze. It takes longer to tally, and being ranked first is most important, right? These are the issues. I find these two a non-issue. This one is a slight issue, right? As a centrist, I want a centrist to win more often. And being ranked first being most important, but you could be everybody's second choice. How do we fix this one? A common thought, this is Baxum bottom middle elimination, which I clearly don't like, is it eliminates the least liked candidate instead of eliminating the least most liked candidate, right? So if you are the most fourth voted, you will be eliminated first. Now this promotes, it brings strategy back. It's a problem because now if I want somebody eliminated, just because they're popular, I can put them 4 and now boost my candidate's chance of winning. That's why I think this is bad, but it does reduce that center squeeze. But it's an option. Just another thing to bring up, something I've thought of. A slightly better option is like Baxum ranked approval or automatic finalist is another thing I would like to call it, right? Essentially, if you hit a certain percentage of second place votes, right? Let's say you are everybody's second choice. Clearly, you should be a finalist, right? If you're everybody's second choice, why would you be eliminated first? Because you don't have anybody's first place votes. So if you hit a certain percentage of second place votes, you cannot be eliminated. You still have to have a majority of first place votes eventually in order to win, but you can't be eliminated and you're an automatic finalist in the runoff. This reduces that center squeeze because somebody who's in the center and is everybody's second choice is an automatic finalist. It keeps well-liked candidates alive. It mimics approval voting as it was planned to be because once again, people that are approved of or rank second or higher make it to the finalists. Promotes broad acceptability, reduces polarization, but it is very complex, which is an issue. And most importantly, this is why I don't like it. This percentage will be debated, right? Parties will be like, oh, I would have won if it was 70%. I would have won if it was 60%. That's going to be an issue. I don't like when you have just an arbitrary percentage tied to your voting method. It's going to be debated. It's going to be manipulated so that certain parties can win. And there is slight strategy, which is what I'm trying to eliminate the most, strategy. I could rank the moderate candidate lower so that way I know that they don't become an automatic finalist and it boosts my favorite candidate's chance of winning. Very slight strategy, but strategy exists, which is why I don't like this as much. That brings me to this form of ranked choice voting that I have created that I think might be better than ranked choice voting, but I haven't fully had the ability to sit down and really run through a bunch of test cases like I have with everything else. This is very complex. That is the major downside, but it protects well-liked candidates, and I can't really see any strategy issues with it. Essentially, the way it works is it's ranked choice voting, but instead of eliminating the person who has the least first place votes, the two people with the least first place votes go head to head with each other in a Condorcet method, right? So if you have 4 candidates, the person with the third and fourth first place votes will go head to head against each other, and whoever loses that head to head would be eliminated, right? So if you have a candidate who has 0 first place votes because they're everybody's second favorite, and a candidate who's only 15% of people's first place, the person who's everybody's second would win that because they win 85%. The only ones that they aren't winning is the one where the other person is ranked first because they're everybody's second place. So they would win that head to head. Then they would go against, it would retally, and let's say all those 15% goes to another person. And now this person has 40% of the first place votes. That 100% second place would win that as well because they would win that head to head, right? 60% of people have them in second, and 100% of people have them in second, but in this head-to-head, they would get 60% of first in that head-to-head and win, right? I don't know if I explained that very well, but essentially, this is a way to protect well-liked candidates without changing strategy, because you still don't want to change there's no strategy to this that I can really find, because anytime you are ranking a candidate properly, it is going to best reflect your ideology so that they are increasing their chances of winning, right? There's never a chance where you can decrease somebody that you like to increase the chances of your favorite candidate winning. The only time I can kind of sort of see that is if your favorite candidate would have likely won the election, but once again, your second favorite candidate, by keeping them high, allows them to win more head-to-heads and climb up. So that is a sort of possibility, but it seems a bit too complex for the average voter to really see that in mass, which is why I think that this might be a better voting system. But once again, it's 9 out of 10 question mark. I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Overall, ranked choice voting would be completely solid, right? I'm fine with having somebody who's 100% second place be eliminated because it's still significantly better than the system that we have today. And then you have, which I mentioned earlier, Condorcet, but if there is a tie or somebody who doesn't win the Condorcet, then ranked choice voting. Right, very confusing. There's a slight bit of strategy due to the way Condorcet is set up, but it's very slight, right? This is another thing. The 3 voting methods that I would be fine with seeing implemented in America are Condorcet, but if there's a tie, ranked choice voting. There's ranked head-to-head or standard ranked choice voting. Any of those 3 would be outstanding. This is kind of a table comparison that I found from a website online, just of all the methods. And they agree, right? This is just the first thing I Googled. I liked their table. It was pretty nice. And if we look at ranked choice voting, they are green or yellow in everything. The only thing that they're red in is simplicity of count, which I would say doesn't matter. These little reds are resistance to strategic voting. Plurality voting is not resistant at all, right? We literally see strategic voting in our current elections. Star voting, I've already talked about. It's the exact same as range voting. It's range voting and then ranked choice voting. And if you have range voting, it is strategic, right? Star voting has terrible strategic voting problems. It just has to be red. And then Condorcet, a lot of people will argue Condorcet doesn't have strategic voting. I would disagree, and this website would also disagree. It is slightly strategic, and this is the most important. And ranked choice voting is the only one that is purely green. Resistance to spoilers, green, which is what we need. Condorcet is the only other one. Everything else still has slight spoilers. Majority cohesion, green, awesome. Condorcet efficiency, Condorcet is the only one that wins that, but still yellow. It means it's mostly Condorcet efficient. Promotes descriptive representation, yellow. And then compatibility with fair multi-winner elections, green, right? Ranked choice voting, a clear winner. Many like true people who understand voting methods agree that ranked choice voting is the best. All the people who like star voting better, it does not win in a single category against ranked choice voting head to head. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing actually wins in a single category head to head with ranked choice voting except for Condorcet in the Condorcet efficiency method. Ranked choice voting is better than every other method in every single category except for Condorcet against Condorcet alone. That is why ranked choice voting is the best voting method. I love you guys. I'm out of here. Peace.